A young woman who's 28 is scheduled to die in May. And no, it's not cancer, it's much, much worse. And we're going to talk about it here today on Speechless. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Speechless. I'm your host, Phares, 23-year-old conservative activist, host of Speechless, the radio show, but also the podcast here on YouTube. And so make sure to not miss a minute of this, that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think, especially on this one. This is an interesting debated topic, and share this with your friends so that they can also join in on the debate. But this young woman who has been posted to TikTok and also her story told by an organization called the Free Press is scheduled to die in May by state-assisted suicide. She's from the Netherlands, and her story is quite interesting. Let's talk about it and react to it here on Speechless.
Hello, my name is Soraya, and I'm 28 years old. I live in the Netherlands, and recently my euthanasia request for my mental suffering got approved.
So, this isn't cancer. This isn't any type of a terminal illness other than quote-unquote mental suffering. By definition, it's all in her head.
Soraya Turabik is 28, and she expects to be euthanized in early May. She is one of a growing number of people across the West choosing to end their lives rather than live in pain that in many cases can be treated. Soraya once had ambitions to become a psychiatrist, but she was never able to muster the will to finish school or start a career. She says she was hobbled by her depression and autism and borderline personality disorder. Now she was tired of living, despite, she said, being in love with her boyfriend, a 40-year-old.
How in love with your boyfriend are you if you want to die?
IT programmer and living in a nice house with their 2 cats. She recalled to me her psychiatrist telling her that they had tried everything, that, quote, "there's nothing more we can do for you. It's never going to get any better."
Okay, no psychiatrist, at least in America, is ever trained to say there's nothing more we can do for you. There's nothing more that can be done. There's only nothing more that can be done for somebody that doesn't want anything more to be done. And that's clear. That's exactly what this young woman wants. However, it should not be the state that allows and, in fact, carries out some level of a suicide. At least not on any term of theirs. Not just saying, "Hey, you just want to die? Okay, let's just make it happen for you." How insane is that?
At that point, she said she decided to die. Quote, "I was always very clear that if it doesn't get better, I can't do this anymore." In 2022, the most recent year for which there is data, Dutch officials recorded 8,720 cases of euthanasia, a 13.7% increase from 2021.
Jesus.
7,666 cases.
Oh, that's not a coincidence that it ends with 666, huh?
To put this in perspective, there were a total of 170,100 deaths in the Netherlands in 2022, meaning euthanasia cases comprised more than 5% of all deaths. Now, typically,
more than 5% of all deaths were people that were just like, well, I want to die.
When we think of people who are considering assisted suicide, we think of people facing terminal illness. But this new group is suffering from other syndromes, depression or anxiety exacerbated, they say, by economic uncertainty, the climate, social media, and a seemingly limitless array of fears and disappointments.
It's all everyone else's fault. That's what I just heard. Economic uncertainty, the climate, social media. Man, so those are what's making you want to kill yourself? That's what's making you want to do it. Well, here's what I can do. Turn off the... If that's really what it is, and these therapists are saying that, oh, there's nothing more you can do, it's not going to get any better, there's nothing more you can do. Well, if those are your 3 reasons, then turn off your phone, turn off the TV, and go live in a cabin in the woods to where you're not hearing anything about the cabin. You can grow your own crops, you can self-sustain, you don't need to worry about the overall economy, and there's not going to be any social media. So if those are your 3 reasons, or your 10th through your 13th reason, then maybe that's what you should try. Unplug, if that's really what it is. But what I can tell you is that's not what it is. What it is there's no sense of religion anymore. Their God is no longer there, because if you had God, if you had some level of a belief in something bigger than yourself, if you had some understanding that other people need you and you weren't a selfish, narcissistic, absorbed individual, then you wouldn't think, the only way my life is going to get better is because I need is if I die, if I'm no longer here. Man, does nobody watch It's a Wonderful Life anymore? Do you know the people, if your 40-year-old husband or boyfriend or whatever is so in love with you and you're so in love with him, then he should stop you. Or at least at a minimum, be very offended. Wouldn't you be offended if the person that you're in love with, or at least that claims that they're in love with you, looks you in the eye and says, the world would be better without me in it? And you're not like, oh my gosh, like, you would do that to me? Of all things, you would do that to me? Like, you would, like, I love you, and you would rather die than be with me? Wouldn't you be offended at all? Wouldn't there be more questions? Or are you more sick? You are more sick if you sit there and you go, you're right. Or, or I support you. That's a sick, sick thought. But it's because these people sit there in a sense of self-loathing, because they have no purpose, they have found no purpose, and they don't believe in anything other than themselves. They praise false idols and don't recognize the one that's actually there for them. Let's finish this off.
I spoke to a healthcare ethics professor who served for a decade on a euthanasia review board in the Netherlands from 2005 until 2014. He told me in those years he saw, quote, the Dutch euthanasia practice evolved from death being a last resort to death being a default option. He ultimately resigned. For my story for the Free Press, I investigate whether suicide, assisted dying, and euthanasia are a sign of human empowerment or a sign that we're in a dystopian world where core human values are disintegrating. You can read, I am 28 and I'm scheduled to die in May at thefp.com.
I'm going to go read it as soon as it comes out, but this is absolutely insane. The answer is simple. This is emblematic of a dystopian world. But dystopian because it's the abandonment of not only core human values, but having any other care for anything other than yourself. Now, this is the thing, and so this is kind of personal for me, and I'll open up about it briefly here. I have known multiple people who have died from suicide in my life. And I felt for their families. I've been able to see exactly how it is when a mom buries her son. I've seen what that looks like more than once. It is one of the most heartbreaking things you could ever witness. And I think society has the wrong idea about suicide. Oftentimes, we treat it with kid gloves. We say, oh, you can't talk about that. You don't talk about that. Or, at the same time, we also have people that are like, oh man, it's so sad to see how much they were suffering. To know how much they were just suffering so much. That's not necessarily false, but here's the real way that we have to frame suicide in the public eye. This is at least for my youthful wisdom, is don't say, oh, it's so sad of how much they were suffering. It's so sad how much they were suffering. And also don't go, hush, hush, can't talk about that. No. What you need to say is, that is the most selfish act an individual can commit. Because what are you thinking in that moment? And this woman, nobody's like, she's not even just out of the blue. No, she scheduled it with her government, which is a whole nother issue. But what are you thinking in that moment? What you're thinking is, I have so much pain. I'm so sad. I. Everything is about you. In fact, in some instances, it's all these other people are being mean to me. It's everything's about you except for the accountability of any of the issues. And so you're in that moment, and then you commit an act without thinking about how will this affect my family? How will this affect my friends or even anybody who has ever been around me? You don't know. And that's not what you're thinking about. That's how I know it is an incredibly selfish act. You want to change the narrative on this? Bring back God and change our frame of reference. That's how we do it. Live for something else, something other than yourself, for a higher power, and change your frame of reference. Suicide isn't something we handle with kid gloves. You're a narcissist, extremely, if that's what you feel like is your only option. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm heartless. Maybe I am. Let me know in the comments. I don't know. Like, subscribe, comment, share. God bless you. God bless America. And God bless this poor woman who's been pushed to extremes by a government and a world that couldn't care less about her. But God bless you. God bless America. And until next time, you've been watching Speechless.